Last time I did my 5 favorite non-fiction books, so here are my 5 favorite fiction books. Post Office by Charles Bukowski. I heard this novel was written in about a week, and it kind of shows, but what's impressive about it is how entertaining it is despite this. The novel doesn't have a plot or even a narrative to speak of. It's more like a series of anecdotes strung together rather loosely. Some bits are stories about stuff that actually happened to Bukowski when he was a postman, and other stuff is clearly just his fantasies. It's sort of a stream of consciousness type of story. This book really opened my mind about the kind of thing a novel could be. Neuromancer by William Gibson. A lot of folks say that this was the first novel of the cyberpunk genre. This book has never been made into a movie, but there are a lot of other movies that have taken large chunks from this book and appropriated them for their own use. As I was reading it, I kept thinking, oh, this is where The Matrix got this idea. This is where The Fifth Element got that idea. This book is also one of the first works of fiction to depict somebody entering into a virtual reality, and the computers in this book are connected together in something akin to the internet. It was published in 1984. One of my favorite things about this book is the very psychedelic way that William Gibson describes a lot of the technology. Animal Farm by George Orwell. This novel is a lot more enjoyable if you're well versed in the history of the Soviet Union and the Russian Revolution. You can identify which characters are metaphors for which historical figures, and how various events in the novel mirror events in Russian history. But even if you don't know much about that subject, I would still recommend reading it. It's enjoyable on its own, and if you do eventually end up studying Russian history, it'll serve as a helpful outline of the important events from the Russian Revolution to the death of Stalin. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I'm one of those people who was very suspicious of anything popular, so I put off reading this book for quite some time. So when I did read it, I was quite surprised at how much I enjoyed it. This is a great example of when books are made into movies, and the movies are not as good as the books upon which they are based. The movie sort of comes off looking like a semi-conventional love story in a lot of ways. But in the book, because everything is told from Katniss's point of view, you get more insight into her emotional state and her ambivalence throughout the whole story. And that's something that's really missing from the movie, and it, I think, changes the story significantly. What's great about this book is how well-paced it is. There are never slow parts, you never get bored, but at the same time you never get the impression that the action is tagged on and pointless. Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is a novel about an English butler who is so consumed by the passion he has for his work that he's completely oblivious to the fairly important things that are happening around him. Most of the story takes place in between World War I and World War II. And the guy who runs the manor at which the butler works is something of an aristocrat who is very concerned about the plight of Germany after the Treaty of Versailles. And because he's rich, he tries to throw his weight around and have some influence over British foreign policy toward Germany. Unfortunately, he is, as an American acquaintance of his points out, an amateur. He muddles his way through his attempts at diplomacy and unfortunately ends up getting taken in by some German nationalists who go on to form the base of the Nazi Party. Stevens, the butler who is narrating the story, due to his instinct to be loyal to his master, is seemingly incapable of seeing what kind of damage that his master is unwittingly doing. At the same time, one of the maids is falling in love with Stevens, and he's equally oblivious to this fact. So those are my 5 favorite fiction books. And a few people over the past few months have been asking me whether I have a Patreon account. Well, I do now. So if you are interested in donating through Patreon, that's an option. It's completely up to you, of course. All of my videos on all of my channels will always be free. I'll leave a link to that in the description.